Wind rolls across a young world, not yet settled into mountains and seas, and the ground itself seems to brace as if it knows what is coming. In the far distance, laughter carries, deep, booming, utterly fearless. It is not mockery, not cruelty, but the sound of unrestrained confidence, the kind that makes even darkness hesitate. Somewhere beyond the bending horizon of Arda, strength is approaching, not cloaked in fire or crowned with iron, but bare-handed, smiling, eager for the contest. This is the moment before balance snaps back into place, when force answers tyranny with joy rather than hate. In this journey through the Elder Darkness, we follow the power of Tulkas Astaldo, champion of the Valar, the strong, not as a silent statue of might, but as motion itself, as laughter in the face of despair. You might find yourself somewhere in the story, perhaps recognizing that urge to run headlong at a problem instead of overthinking it for 3 ages straight. If you enjoy this kind of lore-drenched wandering through Middle-earth, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It tells the algorithm you approve of divine wrestlers who solve cosmic problems with enthusiasm. And while you listen, drop a comment telling us where you are watching from. It's always fun to imagine voices echoing from every corner of the world. Now, lie back and relax as we travel to the world of Middle-earth. Laughter of strength unleashed. Tulkas does not come with the first shaping of Arda. He is not present when Manwë sets the airs in motion or when Aule lays down the bones of the earth. Instead, he arrives later, drawn by sound rather than summons. The distant echo of conflict, the dissonance left behind by Melkor's meddling. Even among the Valar, this is unusual. Most are defined by their domains: wind, water, growth, fate. Tulkas is defined by action. He is strength in motion, laughter in battle, the joy of exertion for its own sake. When he first sets foot upon Arda, the world changes immediately. Melkor, who until then has moved with terrifying freedom, senses something profoundly wrong. This new power does not scheme or corrupt. It runs straight at him. Tulkas hunts Melkor not with armies, not with spells or devices, but with relentless pursuit. He laughs as he runs, and that laughter is described as terrible to the dark enemy, not because it mocks, but because it carries certainty. Middle-earth historians still debate whether Melkor fears Tulkas more than any other Vala, or whether it is the idea of joy itself that unsettles him so deeply. In the first great conflicts of Arda, Tulkas proves that strength alone can alter history. He wrestles Melkor, drives him from the fields of battle, and breaks his hold over the world. This is not subtle power. It leaves no ambiguity. Melkor flees, and for a time, Arda knows peace. Tulkas becomes the living reminder that evil does not always require clever answers. Sometimes it needs to be chased until it collapses. Unlike many of the Valar, Tulkas does not linger in councils. He grows restless during long deliberations, pacing while others weigh words and outcomes. His patience is short, but not cruel. He simply understands himself. Where Mandos pronounces doom and Ulmo whispers through waters, Tulkas waits for the moment when talk ends and action begins. There is something almost refreshing about this, especially when contrasted with the endless debates that later define the politics of elves and men. Remember how long the Council of Elrond takes? Tulkas would have lasted about 5 minutes before asking, "So, who needs to be thrown into a river. A quirky detail often overlooked is that Tulkas delights not only in battle, but in games of strength. Feasts in Valinor echo with his laughter as he wrestles others for sport, not dominance. He marries Nessa, the Swift, whose dancing matches his tireless energy. Together, they embody motion, speed and power, grace and force. This pairing subtly reinforces Tolkien's idea that strength without joy becomes tyranny, and joy without strength becomes fragile. Yet Tulkas' role is not without limitation. He does not shape the children of Iluvatar, nor does he guide them directly. His influence is indirect, almost mythic. When elves later sing of courage, when men stand their ground against impossible odds, one can almost feel an echo of Tulkas' spirit, though he never appears to them. During the War of the Ring, as Aragorn stands at the Black Gate, facing an enemy he cannot defeat by numbers alone, some readers sense that ancient defiance stirring again. Middle-earth historians still debate whether Tolkien consciously echoed Tulkas' fearless confrontation in such moments, or whether the parallel arises naturally from the mythic framework. Tulkas also represents a theological boundary within the legendarium. He cannot act everywhere, nor can he prevent all evil. After Melkor is chained and cast into the void, Tulkas stands guard. But even he cannot erase corruption from the music of the Ainur. This is crucial. Strength, even divine strength, is not omnipotence. It is a tool, not a solution to existence itself. That idea resonates deeply in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, where physical might repeatedly proves insufficient without mercy, wisdom, and restraint. Think of Thorin Oakenshield, strong, brave, stubborn, and how far that alone carries him. There is also a fringed tidbit that fans love to whisper about. Tulkas is said to run faster than any being in Arda, yet Tolkien never explicitly states whether he could outrun Orome's horse or even the winds of Manwë themselves. It's a small mystery, but a fun one. Power in Tolkien's world is rarely quantified, and Tulkas exists almost to resist measurement. He is the strong, not because of numbers, but because no one doubts it. As ages pass and the focus of the story narrows toward Middle-earth, Tulkas recedes into the background. He does not march at the head of hosts against Sauron. He does not descend in thunder when Gondor burns. This absence is intentional. The Valar withdraw, and the fate of the world rests increasingly with mortals. Yet the memory of Tulkas remains embedded in the mythic foundation. Every time evil is confronted directly, without guile, without delay, his shadow stretches faintly across the narrative. There is a quiet irony here. Tulkas, the most physically imposing of the Valar, leaves behind the least tangible legacy. No artifacts, no prophecies, no sacred places tied directly to his name. Instead, his gift is conceptual. The idea that evil can be faced head-on, that joy itself can be a weapon. In a legendarium filled with sorrow and loss, that may be one of the most radical notions of all. And so the section closes not with a battle, but with motion paused. Tulkas standing, laughing, ready, while the world turns toward ages where his fists will no longer decide history. The strong remains, just out of sight, as Arda learns to stand on its own legs. Champion beyond ages. The world moves on without him at the center of the stage, and that absence is itself part of Tulkas Astaldo's power. Strength, once demonstrated, does not need to constantly announce itself. In Valinor, while ages unfold and histories knot themselves into tragedy, Tulkas remains much the same, restless, laughing, watchful. He is the Vala who does not age into melancholy, who does not retreat into memory. If anything, the silence of his fists during later ages becomes a kind of tension, like a drawn bow never released. As the first age unravels beneath the weight of Morgoth's return, Tulkas does not stride east to end it with a single blow. This frustrates many listeners the first time they encountered the legendarium. Why would the champion of the Valar not simply crush evil again? The answer lies in the slow maturation of Arda itself. The Valar have learned painfully that intervention carries consequences. Middle-earth historians still debate whether Tulkas personally disagreed with this withdrawal or whether his restraint was the greatest act of discipline he ever performed. What remains undeniable is that Tulkas shapes the moral geometry of the story even when unseen. Courage in Tolkien's world often looks less like strategy and more like stubborn refusal to yield. When Fingolfin rides alone to challenge Morgoth before Angband, the echo is unmistakable. This is not a winning move. It is not even rational. But it is defiance made flesh. Some scholars argue that Fingolfin's ride is the closest the children of Ilúvatar ever come to embodying Tulkas' spirit directly, a moment where strength is chosen not to conquer, but to stand. By the time of The Hobbit, that same energy has been scaled down to mortal proportions. When Thorin charges into the battle of 5 armies, despite wounds and doom pressing in from all sides, the logic is questionable, but the instinct is ancient. Strength moves forward because standing still feels worse. One light joke whispered among lore enthusiasts is that if Tulkas were present, he would have approved of the charge, disapproved of the gold obsession, and laughed loudly enough to knock a goblin off a cliff. During The Lord of the Rings, Tulkas' influence becomes even subtler. There is no divine wrestler at Helm's Deep, no laughing Vala on the Pelennor fields. Yet when Éomer rallies the Rohirrim after Theoden falls, lifting his sword and shouting defiance into what looks like certain death, the resonance is there. This is strength divorced from hope of survival. Middle-earth historians still debate whether Tolkien intentionally channels Tulkas into these moments, or whether the archetype of joyful defiance simply emerges naturally when myth brushes against mortality. A quirky tidbit often overlooked is that Tulkas is one of the few Valar never associated with sorrow or regret. Even Nienna, Lady of Pity, weeps for the world. Tulkas does not. This does not make him shallow. It makes him specialized. He absorbs conflict without internalizing despair. In a mythos saturated with grief, that makes him almost alien. Some fringe interpretations even suggest that Tulkas represents the part of the music of the Ainur that Morgoth never truly touched. Pure rhythm, pure motion, untouched by dissonance. His marriage to Nessa reinforces this reading. Nessa dances endlessly on the green lawns of Valinor, and Tulkas delights in watching her. Strength here is not domination, but admiration. It is a quiet corrective to Melkor's obsession with possession. Where the dark power seeks to own and control, Tulkas celebrates movement he cannot contain. That philosophical contrast quietly underpins much of Tolkien's moral architecture. As the Third Age closes and the ring is destroyed, the Valar do not erupt into triumph. There is no cosmic victory lap. Evil fades rather than shatters, yet in that fading, One can almost imagine Tulkas smiling, not because the battle was grand, but because it was finished by the smallest hands imaginable. Frodo does not defeat Sauron with strength. He endures, Sam carries, Gollum falls. Strength in the end supports rather than dominates the story. Tulkas' earlier victories made this ending possible by setting boundaries long ago. This brings us to one of the enduring debates. Is Tulkas' power obsolete by the Third Age, or has it been successfully internalized by the world itself? Some argue that once evil is constrained, raw strength becomes less necessary. Others believe that Tulkas' restraint is itself a lesson, that power proves its worth not by constant use, but by knowing when not to act. Tolkien never resolves this explicitly, leaving the champion of the Valar suspended in possibility rather than conclusion. And now, as the tale slows, the laughter grows distant. The ages have done their work. Mountains are worn, kings are remembered only in song, and even the elves fade westward. Somewhere beyond the circles of the world, Tulkas still runs, still laughs, still waits for a contest worthy of his joy. The strength he embodies no longer shakes the earth, but it steadies it like a heartbeat beneath the soil. The pacing softens, the imagery dims, the sound of rushing wind becomes a gentle hush. Conflict loosens its grip, and the muscles of the world finally unclench. You are safe here in this quiet after-struggle where even the strongest power knows how to rest. Let the echoes fade, let the laughter become memory, let Middle-earth breathe and breathe with it, slowly, calmly, as the long story settles into silence.